Welcome to the Michael Rivero What Really Happened radio program.
And welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, May 26, 2021, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pow on a Friday, and all kinds of craziness there too. And let's see here. I need to turn this down just a little bit. Anyway, Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and we're going to do news until we run out of news. Then we're going to open up the phone lines for your comments and questions, observations, and opinions. And I did get a lot of emails about Cynthia McKinney being on the show yesterday, and I'm going to try and get more guests on the program so it's not just me yakking at you and you yakking back at me and everything. So I'm going to see if I can get some interesting people on this program here in the near future. All right, getting into the news here, rather little embarrassment. Walmart sent out an email to hundreds of customers on the one-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder that included the N-word. And I don't know what they were thinking. They have now publicly apologized for that. But it was definitely, I don't know, some marketing genius probably blew it on that one here. Meanwhile, over in Ohio, a judge has declared a mistrial in the murder trial of the brother of Olympic gymnastics champion Simone Biles after jurors said they had read legal paperwork that inadvertently was included in evidence given to them to review. So somebody made a goof on that one. Now, speaking of judges, a little bit of good news. A judge appointed by Barack Obama has now dismissed the case against Steve Bannon from the Southern, by the Southern District of New York. And the judge actually said there was this 200-year-old ruling that made Bannon guilty by accepting Trump's pardon, but then he turned around and dismissed the case. So I'm sure there's a great deal of celebration over in Bannon's part of the world right now. Meanwhile, Ghislaine Maxwell is back in the news again. She's proposing the disclosure of victims and unindicted co-conspirators by September 27th, weeks before her trial. Now, that's a long way away, and she could come down with COVID or massive lead poisoning or get really, really depressed the way Jeff Epstein did. So we'll see what's going to happen on that. I mean, making comments like that, it's almost like she's got a death wish. Or she's trying to basically blackmail her way out of her legal problems. Okay, there's a story coming on out of Involve. There is yet another bombshell from Hunter Biden's laptop, and it shows the former FBI director bribed Joe Biden with a $100,000 donation to the trust fund set up for the grandkids. And the materials recovered from the laptop show that Louis Freeh effectively paid off the then sitting Vice President Joe Biden to oversee what was described as a lucrative business agreement using Hunter as the go-between. So the corruption is definitely surfacing on that one. There has been another hate crime hoax. And in this case, it was a black-owned auto repair shop that was attacked with racist graffiti, a KKK hood, swastikas, broken car windows, and the security camera footage showed it was two black guys doing this. So again, another hate crime hoax, and you have to wonder how many of them are hoaxes, and I would say probably the vast majority of them. Yet another professor, this one Andrea Smith, has been outed, posing as non-white, but in fact she is all white, and so another one of those hoaxes has been exposed. Meanwhile, The House Oversight and Reform Committee yesterday is requesting an investigation into a branch of the United States Postal Service in the wake of reports that it carried out online surveillance of American social media posts. Now, we talked about this when the story first broke. And, you know, this is not the sort of thing you expect the post office to be doing, but they were doing it. So committee chairwoman Carolyn Maloney and ranking member James Comer sent a letter to Postal Service Inspector General Tammy Whitcomb urging her to open an investigation into the Post Office Internet Covert Operations Program. And maybe somebody wanted to bury it in the post office in the hope that it would not become public knowledge. Well, you blew that one, because now we all know about that one. And they're surveilling us. Okay. Over in Arizona, we're going to talk about vote fraud for a little bit because it's still out there. Arizona Representative Mark Fincham wrote an op-ed basically pointing out that the left is so convinced that Joe Biden honestly won the 2020 election that they are fighting against a forensic audit in Arizona. And we're seeing that all across the country. All of these Democrats and leftists who are saying Joe Biden won, and yet whenever anybody wants to take a closer look at the actual election, they're out there screaming, you know, it's a disenfranchisement, it's cheating, it's racist, and really fighting tooth and nail to keep that from actually happening. Now, in Arizona, the Republican-led committee has stripped Democrat Katie Hobbs from hearing any audit-related lawsuits until 2023. Now, Secretary of State Katie Hobbs has been, you know, just screaming about what a terrible thing the Maricopa County audit is, and so the state's Republican-led House Appropriations Committee yesterday stripped her of any authority to intervene on any of those issues. And article coming on out of Bill Claus Law Blog, and this is absolutely true. The electoral fraud is collapsing day after day. And I'm sure the Democrats are convinced that they've got us all bamboozled, and the corporate media is convinced they've got us all bamboozled. But polls are showing the vast majority of American people know last November's election was a fraud, and not just for the presidential race. And so this article is out there saying, you know, are we looking at a potential return to the White House of Donald Trump? Well, this has never really happened before. This is going to be a genuine constitutional crisis where after a president has been sworn in, it is discovered that they stole the election. And I'm sure that a lot of these judges who are steadfastly refusing to look at any of the evidence in the case are being persuaded to do so because they don't want to put the nation through that trauma. Well, we're already in that trauma. You know, anybody who's out there thinking that they got away with the fraud last November, they're living in a dream world, a fantasy world. And this has to be dealt with because Americans have lost all confidence in the fairness and accuracy of their elections. And just, you know, throwing more fraud on there isn't going to correct the problem. Over in Georgia, radio host John Fredericks joined Steve Bannon's War Room to talk about the audit in Georgia. And 2 Georgia state senators have called for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to get involved in the audit taking place in Georgia. And they now have 6 affidavits from Georgia election officials claiming that up to 30,000 of the ballots in Georgia were fake. So it's getting really serious. Now, they did a sample of military ballots in Georgia, 950 of them. Every single one was for Joe Biden. That is statistically impossible. There's no way these were legit. Most military were Trump supporters to begin with. And so it's another very obvious example of how this election was a complete fraud. It was the crookedest election in United States history. Meanwhile, Dominion is out there saying, no, 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 there's nothing wrong with our machines. It's all human error, and they're blaming human error for the voting machines mislabeling Republican ballots in Pennsylvania. And that's, what else is Dominion going to say? Gee shuckies, you caught us? I don't think so. Over in Windham, New Hampshire, they're in the final stretch of their audit, which is scheduled to end tomorrow. We'll see if that actually happens. But they have found documents and ballots from several local communities with bizarre date and time stamps, calling into question their legitimacy. Now, here's a story. This is coming on out of the Epoch Times. And it's talking about how Mark Zuckerberg, paid millions of dollars for progressives to work with 2020 vote officials nationwide. And it was done through the Center for Tech and Civic Life. And they provided millions of dollars in the funding for the elections that came from a $350 million donation from Zuckerberg and his wife. So the CTCL gave out that money, and in exchange for that money, elections divisions agreed to conduct the elections according to conditions set out by the CTCL. In other words, it was a blatant pay-for-pay scheme that was going on out there. Now, earlier today, Mike Lindell tried to crash the governor's dinner. He stated ahead of time he was going to confront Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Arizona Governor Doug Ducey about election fraud, but he was stopped at the door and prevented from doing that. Gee, got something to hide? So let's talk about COVID-19. It's out there. And again, yesterday's interview with Cynthia McKinney was an eye-opener, and the image that's beginning to gel in front of us is that the research into this COVID virus, SARS-CoV-2, actually began in the United States at various universities, including North Carolina, then was shopped out for completion to the Wuhan lab in China in order to evade U.S. laws banning work on biological weapons. And there was a lot of money that was sent to Wuhan from America, including Dr. Anthony Fauci. And Fauci has now flip-flopped and said that, yes, the COVID-19 virus may have been man-made. So, Donald Trump is out there saying, hey, we were right after all, in saying this is what was going on. Meanwhile, over at PolitiFact, they have now pulled their fact check that was debunking the conspiracy theory that COVID-19 was made in a lab. You remember a year ago, this was a conspiracy. Oh, it's made in a lab. No, it's a conspiracy theory. And now even the corporate media is saying, yeah, may have actually been man-made after all. Meanwhile, Senator Rand Paul is accusing Dr. Anthony Fauci of committing perjury over his gain-of-function comments related to the Wuhan lab. Now, Paul was asked on Real America's Voices, the Water Cooler Show, do you believe that Fauci perjured himself? And Rand Paul said, absolutely, he lied to the American people. There was gain-of-function research going on with Dr. Shi Zhengli at the Wuhan Institute. And in her paper, she actually thanks Dr. Fauci and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is part of the National Institutes of Health that Dr. Fauci runs. It's listed at the end of the paper. Now, the paper was fined by NIAID Research, and it lists a 10-digit number that identifies the research money she got from the United States. I think that's a typo there. The paper was funded, not fined. And so it's definitely out there. Meanwhile, another story coming out of Mercola, the Wuhan lab has now been caught deleting files related to funding coming from Dr. Anthony Fauci and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. So they're burying the evidence already as fast as they can. You know, the horse is out of the barn on this one. Sorry, just like the election fraud, everybody knows what happened. And I think these people are thinking too much like lawyers. You know, there is no evidence that they could go into a court. Well, that does not get you off the hook in the court of public opinion. So Rand Paul has now introduced an amendment banning gain-of-function research in China, sponsored by the United States, and the senators all cheered on that one. Republicans are calling for Dr. Fauci to be fired or resign after all of his U-turns on COVID and its origins. He's now trying to defend giving $600,000 to the Wuhan lab to study how the viruses supposedly can transmit from bats to humans before the COVID outbreak. So it's getting murky out there. Now, we're seeing all these people using this crisis to bash China. Ooh, bad China, it's biological warfare, they're sicking on us. And at the same time, they're trying to sever that link from Wuhan back to the United States. So we're seeing this article that came out of womensystems.com. Joe Biden's administration has now shut down a State Department investigation into the Wuhan laboratory as a source of the COVID-19 outbreak. This happened last night. And yeah, they don't want that link followed back to the United States, because the American people are going to start asking more questions the government really doesn't have a good answer for. Okay, talk show host Wendy Williams surprised Dr. Oz on his show, declaring she will not be getting the COVID vaccine. All right, another story, this one coming out of Russia today. Over 10,000 Americans have gotten COVID-19 despite being fully vaccinated. This is an admission by the CDC. The actual number could be a lot higher. We reported earlier in the week how the CDC has changed the rules for reporting so-called breakout cases. That is, cases of COVID-19 occurring in people who've had the vaccination. So as of April 30th, there were 10,262 cases of fully vaccinated people being infected with COVID-19. What a wonderfully effective vaccination or gene therapy or whatever they're calling it this week this is turning out to be. Meanwhile, America's frontline doctors are suing the federal government to prevent forcing experimental COVID vaccines on U.S. children. And I am glad they are doing that, because there is a new Pfizer study out that is admitting 4/5 of all vaccinated children aged 12 and over are complaining of side effects now. And, you know, it's all about the Benjamins. It's all about the money. But the study is showing that 80% of the children develop side effects that can lead to severe trauma. This is bad. We're back in 1976 territory all over again. We really are. We talked about this earlier in the week about how Facebook is censoring any information about COVID or the vaccines that is not in line with the official story. And over at True News, Edward Saul was basically looking at the collaboration between the big tech censors and Chinese communist controllers to try and censor the bioweapon truth. Now, I don't know that this is necessarily coming from China, given the indications that this research actually began in the United States. I'd say that big tech is collaborating, if you will, with sources much closer to home. Now, the story, this one coming out of Project Veritas, they're still doing great work over there. They've got a new series of whistleblowers from Facebook that have revealed a secret filter for liberty-based and religious-based objections and skepticism, including vaccine passports. Now, you can go over to some of these social media websites and you can type in some really tacky and gross things and get lots of hits. But when it comes to election integrity and COVID-19, they are just shutting things down. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about COVID-19, and over at Investment Watch blog, they have a story where Pfizer is starting to test a COVID-19 booster shot combined with pneumococcal vaccine. And so this is their marketing plan, that the COVID shot is going to become an annual shot, much like the flu shot is right now, and it's just more money for the vaccine companies. Now, over in Oklahoma, there is a bill that is under contention right now, Senate Bill 821, which would allow any individual in Oklahoma to freely choose their own pharmacy, which sounds to me like a really good idea. Independent pharmacists are obviously supporting this, but pharmacy benefit managers are forcing their customers to go to the large chains for economic reasons. And again, if you're on prescription medication, shop around. You will be surprised at how widely those prices vary. A lot of the larger pharmacy stores, they'll loss lead on common medications and then really jack up the prices on some of the others that you're probably going to need as well. Righty. The World Economic Forum issued a tweet urging companies to fire unvaccinated employees as part of the jobs reset. This triggered a huge backlash, and the World Economic Forum has since deleted that tweet. Okay, now, I love this next one. Up in Michigan, residents say they identify as fully vaccinated in order to not wear their masks in public anymore. Boy, there's a t-shirt in that one, I think. Okay, so anyway, many residents in a small county in Michigan's Upper Peninsula are declaring that they identify as fully vaccinated as a result of recent guidance that allows inoculated citizens to go out in public without wearing masks. All right, there we are. All right, getting into the international news. Syrians are getting ready to go to the polls in an election that Bashar al-Assad is expected to win in a landslide. And even though the election has not happened yet, Western nations, especially the United States, are already denouncing the election. It's going to be a fraud. It's going to be crooked. You can't trust it. Assad needs to go. And talk about a double standard. This is the same government that is trying to convince you to ignore all the evidence of massive election fraud last November. But take our word for it, Bashar al-Assad is going to steal the vote over there in Syria. Now, back in 2014, Bashar al-Assad won nearly 89% of the vote in an election that international observers said was fair and clean and transparent. Getting on down to the situation with Israel and Palestine, the ceasefire is still holding, but it's definitely under attack. There's an interesting article that came out of Russia today saying that Israel is carrying out the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, robbing them of their homes and lands, yet it pretends it's the victim. And yes, we have seen that, all along. As Israel goes on in there and beats up on the Palestinians and screams, "We're victims, we're victims, we're victims." And if you don't believe us, then you're a filthy Jew-hating anti-Semite who wants Hitler to come back and gas Jewish babies in the ovens. And that leads us to this next article. This one is coming out of Middle East Eye, how Israel is using disinformation to delegitimize the Palestinian cause. And I think one of the most obvious and heavy-handed pieces of disinformation Israel keeps coming out with is the claim that there never was a Palestine, even though it's certainly present on maps going back to the Middle Ages. There was Palestinian coinage. Even Golda Meir, there's a postcard that she wrote listing her address as Palestine. But Israel, with their control of the media, is out there saying there never was a Palestine. They had that slogan, a land without a people for a people without a land, and that's complete and utter nonsense. Palestine had a solid culture. They had agricultural exports, and you can go back and look at the silent movies produced by like the Lumiere brothers, showing what life in Palestine was like before Israel showed up. Story coming on out of Press TV. Over in Great Britain, students are being punished for defending Palestine. And they pick one example, Rochdale's Older Hill Community School. A teacher accused a young teenager of having racist views for wearing a Palestine flag face mask. Over in Manchester, Parswood High School defended its decision to suspend a student for chanting Free Palestine in class, while another student is being investigated for cutting down an Israeli flag being flown at Berkshire's Maiden Early School. So, okay. And for the third day in a row, Israeli settlers have stormed Al-Aqsa, guarded and protected by Israeli officials and forces. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about Israel and Palestine, and we're talking about how for the third day in a row, Israeli settlers are protected by Israeli police. Stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque. Meanwhile, over in Hebron, settlers attacked the houses of two separate families. They uprooted 35 olive trees and destroyed a yield of summer crops. So the behavior is still continuing there. Story coming on out of Middle East Eye saying that these armed settler raids in the West Bank raising fears of heightened violence. And obviously, if Israeli settlers are continuing to do what they're doing, it's going to lead to more violence. Back on the 14th of May, Israeli settlers killed Nidal Safadi, my mistake, a 30-year-old Palestinian man from the village of Urif, and he left behind two daughters and a son. On the same day, Awad Harb, a 27-year-old Palestinian, was killed in similar conditions by an Israeli settler. So it's getting really ugly over there. Now, obviously, with all this violence and Israel pounding Gaza, America's deal of the century. Remember, Jared Kushner was out there with this deal of the century that was going to solve the Israel-Palestine conflict. Well, that's obviously now in the dustbin of history. It was always a fraud to begin with because it was going to give everything that Israel wanted and just take things away from Palestine. And so that little illusion is now completely gone. Over in Lebanon, the Secretary General of the Lebanese Hezbollah resistance has warned Israel that any aggression on the holy sites in occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, could lead to a regional war and destruction of the Tel Aviv regime. And Syed Hassan Nasrallah made the remarks in a televised speech yesterday in his first address after the victory of Palestinian resistance groups in their fight against Israel during Israel's latest war on the besieged Gaza Strip. And it cost them a lot, but the Palestinians have come out on top in the eyes of the world in this latest conflict. On the eve of the visit by Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Netanyahu has started dropping hints that Israel may take independent action against Iran. Now, remember yesterday we were talking about reports that at least as far as the United States was concerned, the war with Iran might be on hold because they're busy, trying to annoy China and Russia. And so Netanyahu is saying that Israel may try and go it alone. I don't think Iran would be as easy to cow as Gaza is. And again, we all know that Israel is a nuclear power, but the political cost of actually using one of those weapons would be intense because Israel has sort of officially denied having them. The United States has gone along with that denial in order to continue sending your money to Israel, despite the Symington Amendment to the Foreign Appropriations Act and the Glenn Act. And if Israel uses a nuclear weapon, it's going to make not only the Israeli government look like a bunch of liars, it's going to make the U.S. government look at best like a bunch of fools. And the American people are going to say, well, we want our money back from Israel because it was obtained under false pretenses. Now, Netanyahu made a point of blasting the Iran deal in front of Secretary of State Blinken. And the reason is very obvious. Right now, Netanyahu needs an enemy. He needs an enemy the way the U.S. needed the USSR back in the 1950s and 1960s to keep the population scared and under control. So he does not want the deal to move forward because then everybody's going to say, okay, Iran is curtailed for the time being. Let's start looking at what's going on inside Israel politics. So there's another story from Press TV that the United States is consulting Israel about the Iran nuclear deal. And obviously, Israel does not want that deal to happen. And Netanyahu made a point of saying, while he was standing right alongside Blinken, that the U.S. should not return to the Iran deal. He is desperate to keep Iran as an enemy, as a boogeyman, to keep the Israeli people scared and compliant. Over in Great Britain, activists succeeded in shutting down the second Israeli arms factory in a week. And activists from the Palestine Action Group yesterday scaled and occupied the roof of a factory run by Israeli arms maker Elbit Systems in the British town of Tamworth, Staffordshire, forcing the site to close. So there we are on that one. Britain's new flagship, the HMS Queen Elizabeth, is going to lead a carrier group into China's missile kill zone during its first deployment. And this is another provocation. And they're coaching it as a freedom of navigation exercise, saying that the international law of the sea allows Great Britain to send nuclear-armed forces along anybody's coast there. Now, the U.S. and its allies have been accusing China of threatening the so-called rules-based order. Of course, the rules are made up by the West, and then they wag fingers at anybody who refuses to go along with that. Meanwhile, there is a U.S. destroyer will be joining the British carrier group as well. Over in China, they're developing a lot of new weapons there. Photos have leaked out about a 20-barrel Gatling gun, and we can only imagine the firing rate on that. And meanwhile, they have a new stealth bomber, the Xi'an H-20. It's nicknamed the God of War in the Sky. And it is estimated that it could be able to hit Guam with nuclear weapons flying from mainland China. That's 1,800 miles. And that's pretty serious stuff. It's thought to look a lot like the U.S. B-2. And, you know, when you care to steal from the very best. You want to talk about trying to rewrite history? The CIA is commemorating the 60-year anniversary of the Bay of Pigs with a victory coin. And this has drawn a tremendous amount of ridicule and abuse all across social media. And the official statement is out there saying this silver coin commemorates an anticipated but never realized Bay of Pigs victory, which is another polite way of saying they lost, and rather badly as well. And a lot of people are saying this is the CIA version of a participation trophy. And the Bay of Pigs was an absolute debacle. And the CIA blamed it on President John F. Kennedy, But then Kennedy said the CIA lied to him and said that if they showed up with the Cuban brigades and U.S. support, the Cuban people would run on down to the beach and join the Cuban brigades to overthrow Fidel Castro. So Kennedy went along with that. The invasion took place, and the people of Cuba ran down to the beach and pounded the Cuban brigade into the sand. Most of them were captured, and the United States actually had to violate its own embargo against Cuba to trade much-needed medical supplies in exchange for those prisoners. And the U.S. knows how to carry a grudge. They've never forgiven Cuba for that. The embargo is still in place 60 years on, which is terrible for people who like Cuban rum and Cuban cigars. Talking about the economy now, story out of Global Research talking about how debt is a financial weapon used to subordinate developing countries. Now, there is nothing new in this. The United States was using banks and debt to control Central and South American countries going all the way back to the 1960s. These countries would borrow money from American banks to build up their industry. Then the U.S. would engage in sabotage of various important crops so that these countries couldn't repay their debt and thus were obligated to do what the United States told them to do. But as of last year, the total amount of debt owed by developing countries is $11 trillion. The interest alone is hundreds of billions of dollars per year, over $1 billion per day. And this is many times greater than the aid given by rich countries. And it's another way of keeping them under control until they stand up and say, we are repudiating the debt. It's odious, and we're just not going to, pay it anymore. Another story, this one coming on out of Station Gossip. Earlier in the week, we were talking about Joe Biden is back at the White House. He's working on the new budget, and he was going to drop student loan forgiveness from the new budget. But this article that came on out of Station Gossip is saying that Joe Biden could cancel student debt by executive order. The question is he going to do that? And my nickel is saying, no, he won't. Okay. Story coming on out of IB Times, and I would say it's about time here. And the article is basically talking about a new bipartisan bill assembled by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer that is calling for $52 billion in emergency funding for semiconductor chips, because the chip shortage has put a snag in the auto industry ramp-up. And now that the automakers are back online, chip demand is in full swing. Suppliers are unable to meet the needs of the industry, forcing Ford, GM, Honda, Toyota, and others to temporarily shut down plants. And some of the vehicles are being produced without the chips, which decreases their overall gas mileage. So there's a little bit of good news. It's about time somebody decided we're going to step on in and get the chips flowing again. There's a comment in there about letting the chips fall where they may, but I'm going to refrain from that one here. Over at Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' spaceflight company, they lost out to SpaceX on a major multi-billion-dollar contract to NASA. Congress is turning around, ordering NASA to make not one, but 2 awards. And this order is coming through the Endless Frontier Act. This is a bill to beef up resources for science and technology. It's being debated in the Senate this week. And if it passes, it would amount to a $10 billion bailout for Blue Origin to keep them going. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos has announced he is going to formally step down as the Amazon CEO on July 5th. And Andy Jassy will take over as CEO. Bezos will remain on the board of directors, but I guess he's probably going to dedicate more time to the Blue Origin spaceship company, the Washington Post, and so forth. By the way, Amazon has signed a deal for $8.45 billion to buy the Hollywood studio MGM and all of its properties. And that means all of the old MGM films are going to be now on the streaming library at Amazon Primes. It's over 4,000 new movies, including James Bond and The Hobbit. So for you Prime users, that's a little bit of good news. Getting into immigration now, Representative Carter has introduced a bill to bar federal funds to states that provide any assistance to illegal immigrants. I think it's an excellent idea and long overdue. I think there need to be some Title VIII lawsuits involved here. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has overturned the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals regarding this Mexican green card holder challenging a deportation order. And the court reversed a previous decision from the U.S. Court of Appeals, saying that he was removed, the Mexican refugee Palomar Santiago was removed invalidly over a DUI, and the Supreme Court has said, no, we can kick him out. I think it's a really good idea here. Story coming on out of the Daily Mail. The FBI is still searching for the operator of a heavily modified drone. That's how they're describing it. That flew into the path of a U.S. Customs and Border Protection helicopter, flew around it several times, and led it on a high-speed chase over Tucson, Arizona. That is a very, very capable drone. The drone was modified to reach 14,000 feet and speeds over 100 miles per hour with a range of 70 miles. That is an amazing, that's a very, very powerful transmitter that you could home in on. And the FBI said the drone made erratic maneuvers and flew into military airspace. Now, the unsafe operation of unmanned aircraft became a federal offense in 2018 with the passage of the Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Act. And 22-year-old Hollywood man Andrew Rene Hernandez became the first person charged under this law and was sentenced to probation and a $500 fine. Okay. Getting into wokeness and political correctness, this has gotten totally out of hand. This is way over the top. There is a new trend among the trans LGBTQIA plus whatever, and it's called being a nullo. And its nullification is on the rise, and it basically involves surgical removal of all sexual characteristics, the genitals, and in the case of women, the breasts, and just create a smooth genital area. And this is the latest fad among these gender bender narcissists. And it's absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. Right, there was this Navy veteran who protested Drag Queen Story Hour, and he's now facing political retaliation from Antifa and the FBI. Take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines, 512-248-8252. Now, not too long ago, the Army took its Army Combat Fitness Test, and they made it gender neutral on this idea that there is no difference whatsoever between men and women, and that may make for good politics and wokeness and so forth. But it didn't work out in the real world because the data showed that nearly half of the female soldiers could not pass the test and face being removed from the service if the gender-neutral test becomes official. So now the Army is saying they're going to return back to the gendered fitness standards. So there'll be one standard for the men and one standard for the women. And it's crazy out there. Tonight there is a supermoon, a blood moon, and a lunar eclipse. And it's basically right before sunrise, the West Coast will be able to see a nearly total eclipse. Many parts of the Americas and Asia will see a partial eclipse. And if you're in Eastern Australia, the entire eclipse will be visible to you. I'm not going to be looking at it from here in Indiana. We're under thunder showers, and I've seen eclipses before, and frankly, we need the water here. Over in Germany, there's been a new study by Merbach et al. Saying that the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has led to 14% more vegetation over the past 100 years. And this is, of course, something the global warming people don't want to hear, that carbon dioxide is actually good for plants, and that more plants are good for getting rid of the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. The global warming people want to control carbon dioxide by controlling your life, telling you where you can drive, how you can drive, how much electricity you can use, and, of course, charge you a carbon tax. Over in Tesla, vehicles bound for North America will no longer use radar sensors in the Model Y and Model 3. This is a design decision to use only cameras and machine learning to support the Advanced Driver Assistance Program and other active safety features. Now, like many of Tesla's moves, the decision to stop using radars runs counter to the industry standard. Now, for now, the radarless cars will only be sold in North America. Tesla has not said when or if it might remove the radar sensors in vehicles built for Chinese and European customers. I'm glad the technology is out there, but to be very, very honest, I prefer driving my own car. And I'll confess I'll use the cruise control to keep from getting speeding tickets, but that's pretty much it. I don't want the car driving itself for me. Out in the Atlantic, we were hearing about Tropical Storm Anna, which was being heralded as the first named storm of the year. It's already fizzled out. But they're saying, you know, we're going to have a hurricane season this year. And, you know, we do every year. All righty, phone lines are open. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Perfect. I called to talk to you about this global warming,
yes,
climate change nonsense. You were just talking about, you know, basically how the world, you know, self-regulates itself. You know what it's like, Mike? It's like remember the old days with the old dial thermostats?
Yes.
For your heat?
Yes.
Inside of there, if you took the cover off, there's this little thing. It was called a heat anticipator. And what it was actually is you would take a current reading of, you know, back in the old days when there was a standing pilot of what, or you could just read it off the side of the gas valve, and you would dial that in. So basically what it would do, it would set so that, like when the temperature in your house got to, you know, maybe -2 or -3 Fahrenheit below what you set it for, the furnace would come on.
Yes.
And it would go up to maybe a degree or two above, and then it would shut off. And you get that undulating effect.
Yes.
Right? Exactly what you would see in these core samples, these ice core samples, right? And that's how the world, that's how the planet Earth, and you know, regulates what's going on. So that, you know, when the temperature goes up, for instance, because of increased solar activity, more carbon dioxide is released out of the oceans, which is...
Well, you also have increased life. Increased solar energy means increased life. Increased biomass means, you know, increased exhalations.
Yep. So carbon dioxide goes up, so the Earth gets greener. And you get that undulating effect of up and down, up and down, up and down. And then there are other things that we don't even understand yet. You know, how our solar system moves throughout the galaxy. And, you know, the like exactly what triggers, for instance, an ice age. Could it be a meteor? No one is absolutely sure about these events.
Well,
But
the
one thing is
prevailing
for sure.
theory is that the shape of the Earth's orbit changes slowly over time, going from roughly circular to more elliptical. And when it's more elliptical, according to Kepler's orbital motion laws, the Earth will spend more time at the far end of the ellipse, and that's when we get the ice ages. And when the orbit becomes more circular, we get the interglacial periods.
Yeah, it's a great theory. It would explain everything. Unfortunately, we don't really live long enough, and we haven't been keeping track, of this long enough to really say that this is the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds good. And so here's the thing: carbon taxes. Now, as you know as well as I do, that these carbon taxes aren't collected and put into a pool where they can only be spent on green projects and all that. They just get thrown right into everything else.
Yes.
And all it really is to pay for the increased interest payments on debt.
Yes.
Because government is irresponsible, and
Yes.
central banks and bankers control the government. And the rich people own the banks that control the government. So if they were to actually do this thing right, this quote-unquote Build Back Better, and I've talked about this previously in calls even 6 months ago, everything should be uniform so that, I've driven electric cars, and they are outstanding. I would prefer to drive an electric car over a gasoline-powered engine any day of the week. They're quieter, there are less moving parts, they're more reliable. The problem is the charging.
Yes.
But if gas stations were converted into battery swap stations and all batteries were uniform.
Yes.
So you'd go in, and in 5 minutes your battery would be swapped out and you drive away.
Yes.
And of course, a pickup truck would have 2 batteries. Transport trucks might have 6 or 8, whatever it is, right? Whatever the load requirements are. But they're not interested in this sort of thing at all. These rich folk.
Yeah.
What they want is obedient workers. People that will do the job that they're told to do, keep their mouths shut, and their head down. That's what they're interested in. And
Yes.
anybody that speaks up, especially now,
Yes.
is immediately canceled. That's what's really happening.
Yes.
It's all about, like you say, the Benjamins. And it won't end until we make it end. But how's that going to happen?
Well, I'm
don't
very,
have any
very
power.
concerned about that, and I'm seeing and reading, a lot more people, are coming to the conclusion that John F. Kennedy was right. When peaceful revolution becomes impossible, violent revolution is inevitable. I don't like it, but it's time to basically acknowledge it's a very real possibility.
Yeah, I read a lot of comment sections in this media that I visit, and a lot of it has to do with your website, and it's always the same thing over and over again. People are just sick and tired of it.
Yes.
It's getting to the point where the gauntlet is now going to be thrown down, and it's unfortunate. But, on the bright side, the people on the left tend to like to dye their hair and wear funny clothes and put on makeup. They're not really concerned with reality and what it really means to live within that reality. For instance, being self-reliant and responsible and that sort of thing. So the people on the right hopefully have an advantage in that sense. But who's to say, right?
Yeah.
Bars will do really crazy things, unfortunately. Anyway, that's my rant for the day, Mike. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. Dadia. Yeah, Mike. Mike. Yeah. What I just want to say is, first off, I almost heard. I couldn't believe when I heard it, but this Mad Maxine Water wants to. He basically wants to make Pink Floyd a national holiday, and get rid of Memorial Day. I checked it out. It is basically true. She wants to get rid of Memorial Day to have Pink Floyd Day, George Floyd Day. What the hell is that?
I was going to say, are you sure it's Pink Floyd? But no, it's George Floyd.
Well, George Floyd, yes, George Floyd, Mike. But that's probably where we're going with in this country with this buffoonery of these demon rats. It's basically insanity.
Yes,
it is insanity, actually. And that's just one thing that's going on, Mike. And now I want to get back to that because, Mike, I want to ask your opinion. Was this guy Derek Chauvin a racist? Was he being racist when he killed Floyd? Did they know each other in the nightclub? Did they work together, security? What's the real story behind this?
I don't think we're ever going to know because it's just been so much propaganda, bovine excrement shoveled all across this incident. Whatever facts and truth there may have been have long since vanished.
Absolutely, and that's right. And, they don't want to tell you that Chauvin and Floyd probably had some kind of beef at work. We don't know what it could have been over a woman or something. But, they're making this guy like he's the biggest Klanman there ever was, and he was a big racist and all that. No, I don't believe this, and I don't buy this narrative these Zionists are putting on the American public.
Mm-hmm.
Who's allowing this? Who's really allowing this? These ABC, NBC, CBS, MSLSD, and all these criminal creeps that are running our narrative. We're only basically 2% of our population. Something's wrong here. It's got to be addressed immediately. Now, Mike, going back, I listened to your call yesterday with Cynthia McKinney. Really good show you had yesterday.
Yes, it was.
Very good show, Mike. That was a really good show, and I enjoyed that. Listening to that lady speaking, very formative and very intellectual. But now, Mike, getting back to now what I really want to talk about, that's what I really called the show about, other than this Mad Maxine and this pig Pelosi pulling this nonsense they're doing in California with 9 million illegals. Mike, they're dropping these illegals off in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They're dropping these illegals off.
Yeah, I've been hearing that.
Now, who is allowing that? Now, Marsha Blackburn's out there. The governor's out there of Tennessee. Matter of fact, they had him on last night. He's basically not going to tolerate this. But in the meantime, in the darkness of night, at midnight or better, what department is doing it? The DHS or something? They're actually dropping these kids off in these cities. Where the hell are they putting them, Mike? Who's taking care of all these people?
I don't know. I think they're becoming part of the homeless population problem.
I believe you're right. And, Mike, I'm in shock right now because I actually went, and last week I went to go get a plate of oxtail. I don't know if you know. I'm sure you know what that is.
Yes.
Oxtail beef. And, Mike, it jumped up $6 since last week.
Yes.
I asked the guy, what happened here? I told him, no, I'm not buying it. I used to be able to get it for $9 with the plate and everything. Now it's up to $15, Mike. And in 1 week's time. He goes, hey, that's just inflation.
Yeah.
That's what the guy's telling me.
Well, he's right.
It went $6 in a week's time. The beef, the meat, the chicken, everything's going to go off the chain, Mike. And you know what? This is just the beginning. This is just the warm-up. This bumbling buffoon imbecile is 2.0 Jimmy Carter. This Biden is going to make Carter look like Carter with Ronald Reagan. Mark my words. You're going to see the economy crashing down because this buffoon, and then Mike, he's closed on our pipeline, but he's assigning the bill for Russia to have fuel flowing all over Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, this is off the charts, and this is uncharted territory in my book. What's going to happen? And if these military people in our military don't step up and take back this country, I hate to say this, Mike, and I'm not one for this, but I'm telling you right now, I think you're going to see something that like what the DuPont wanted to do, what Roosevelt, but actually may happen, or whoever it was that tried to. There's going to be some kind of a military situation that's going to have to happen when he's bumbling the phone. He's allowing our country to be invaded every day. He doesn't. These people don't come here, like Marco said from Alabama, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
These people don't love this country. They can care less about this country.
No, they're here for the free stuff.
They're here for the freebies. They don't. Argentina, by the way, Mike, did you see what's going to happen in Argentina next year with the inflation?
No, well, I can imagine,
50%.
yes.
No, they say it was all just on the news. 50%. They're looking at 50% inflation next year in Argentina. That's why these illegal Central Americans and Mexicans and all that don't want to go to South America. They want to come here. And Mike, I got to get to this point too, Mike. I hope somebody calls in and refutes me. Are these people called Latinos like AOC called I'm a Latina, or is she a Hispanic? Because she sure the hell ain't no Latino. She keeps saying I'm a Latino. No, you're not a Latino, AOC, Ocasio-Nacio, Nasty Cortez. Who is this, a filthy barmaid? I mean, give me a break. You know, and they keep saying they're like, no, you're not from Latin America. You're from Hispaniola, Hispanic America. The Latinos were the Italians. Who's kidding who, Mike? That's another filthy thing that's been perpetrated.
Yes.
Only Latinos were the priests that went down there speaking Latin. I mean, what a scam that's turned out to be. But, you know, Mike, another thing is BLM, Antifa, Portland, Seattle, these cities are still in flames.
Yes.
Biden don't give a dang. He don't bring in the military. He don't care. Let them burn down. You know, Mike, young lady, beautiful lady said yesterday on one of the shows I saw, I think it was Newsmax. You know what? It was Newsmax. She said, just pull all the cops out. Just resign and let them go. Let them go. Let the cities burn. Screw it. No law, no order. Let them go. Those left coast states are insane anyway. Look at California.
Yeah.
California's destroyed. Water, no food, inflation over there is insane. I mean, and this is what these demon rats want. I mean, you don't want it, you can have it. Let them have it, Mike. That's what I say. Let them have it. You know? And like I called another show earlier, pretty soon you can't even have a name called the White Sox in Chicago. You can't be called the White Sox. It's racist.
Yeah.
They're not going to allow the team to be called the White Sox. They got rid of a great name like the Redskins for a football team.
Yep.
I would think a lot of American Indians would love that name, Redskins. That's an honor to them. They're tough and rough. No, they had to change the name to the Washington football team. What kind of filth is going on in this country, Mike? Where the hell are the white men anymore? They have any balls left? Does anybody, except us, that call your show? I don't think. Look at these white kids; they're be all dummied down, sissified.
Yeah.
It's a freak show. It's a freak show. What's going on with these kids? They're playing video games. I mean, it's Mike. I don't think if we had to took on Hitler in this kind of condition, we got our ass whooped. I don't care.
Yeah, we're not raising a generation of young people who are going to do very well in the coming World War. That's obvious to everybody.
Obviously, absolutely. You know, well, I don't know what the solution is, Mike, other than we just totally have to wake the masses up. I did hear.
I'm doing my best.
Listen, a couple guys. Well, you're number one, Mike. But we have a guy down here in South Florida on the radio, on AM radio. He's pretty good. He's been really going out there off the limb because he's like, man, this is off the chain. What they're doing in this country, and you know, Mike, these red states barely. If they want, they're going to turn these red states blue if they can with all these illegals.
Yeah, they are.
The operandi of these people is that these turn all of these red states blue, and that's exactly what they're going to try to do. And you know what? They don't care about this country. They want to turn this place into Venezuela, Cuba, however, whatever third world banana republic. Then you had this guy, John Cena, being a real pussy with China. I mean, what's going on here with that nonsense? It's unbelievable. Yeah. You know, Mike, you know what the latest one is? Did you hear about the latest with Phil Mickelson?
No, I didn't.
One of the commentators said he must be using he had a racist ball. His golf balls he was using are racist.
Oh, that is really out there. You know, it really has. It's almost become a parody of itself in its extremism.
Yes, it is. And you know, you looked at Mickelson's golf ball when he won Sunday. It has red, white, and blue. It has red and blue lines on it. And it's a white ball.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my, this country's lost, Mike. I mean, now Mickelson's using a racist ball. Oh my goodness, it's the filth that these leftists get away with is pathetic. But you know what? People dummy down society is absorbing all this nonsense. it's off the charts, Mike. It's gone.
It really is off the chart,
Yeah.
and now they've got the nullies,
Yeah, it is.
which, I mean, it's really hard. It's crazy. Our whole country has gone crazy. It really has.
It's absolutely gone crazy, and thank gosh for your show, Mike, that I get take off a little bit of steam, man. Because I tell you, I don't listen to call every day, but man, when I get a chance, I gotta let it go because man, it's just an insanity. Every filthy day we hear about the illegal invasion or this.
Yeah,
It's madness. It's madness. You know what? I hope some of you guys. You got some great calls calling in. I hope a lot of calls calling.
we've got a lot of callers waiting on the line right now, and so
Okay, I'll let you go, Mike. But I just got to say this, Mike. We got to see what's going to happen on Memorial Day weekend because Memorial Day weekend is going to be here this weekend.
Yes.
And I want to see what the shootings. You know, pretty soon, Mike, they're going to start taking bets in these on these Vegas and all that, and these bookies houses. How many murders are on the weekend in Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore? That's coming next. You'll be able to bet wagers. What's the number? What if you can hit the number? I'm telling you, that's coming next. 65 in Chicago over the weekend. Boom. You put $50 on it, you could probably make 1,000 or something, or 2,000. That's our next thing that's going to be coming with the crime rate.
Yeah, murder futures.
Well, Mike, and we did have a shooting over there in California. I don't know exactly what happened, but I guess the guy was like a disgruntled employee, and he said that was it, and he went off the charts over there.
He went postal. We saw that one. Yeah. Okay.
His name was like Cassidy. Anyway, Mike, thanks for taking my call. Have a great day and have a great show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we are so close to the commercial. I'm just going to do a little bit of news here. Apparently, over in China, amid all this talk about investigating Wuhan, China is now calling for a probe of Fort Detrick and their biolabs. To get to the bottom of where all these biological weapons are coming from. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We got callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show, and again, a quick reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network needs your continuing support to go on doing what we are doing, which is informing the American people so that they can make good choices. Once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. Now, remember, we have a couple of promo deals going right now. If you send in a donation of $100, you will get your choice of an official RBN coffee mug or an official RBN t-shirt, so include a return address and your preferred t-shirt size if that's what you want. If you send in a donation of $115, you will get both items, and don't forget that front sight firearms deal because that's really sweet. All right, we're going to go back to the phones. Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, hello, Mike.
Hello.
Oh, okay, great. Hey, I want to thank you for covering that cover-up that's going on. Now that they're back tracing the source of the COVID back to U.S. labs. This reminds me, right at the start of this, there was a huge propaganda campaign put to the alternative media, 4chan, what have you. China, bat soup, and China attacked us. And, of course, you heard it on InfoWars, etc. This reminds me of the post-9/11 era. You remember the 28 pages later on? They go, it's Saudis, and you just got to keep in mind that the anthrax attack in the immediate aftermath of 9/11,
yes,
that targeted Tom Daschle, among other leaders that were calling for an independent investigation, that was traced back to Fort Detrick, Maryland.
Yes, it was.
Fort
It
Detrick,
turned out
Maryland
to be our anthrax.
Yes, it was. Yeah, same song and dance, and same disinformation. So keep that in mind and keep covering it. I appreciate it. Have you heard of that? This video supposedly where magnets are sticking to the injection sites? People coming out of
I've seen a couple of those, and in all fairness, I did try it here, and I did not get any result. I used a neodymium magnet. where I got my Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and there was absolutely nothing there. And my concern is that the magnet story, along with the one about Bluetooth, is designed to make people cautious about vaccines look like nutcases, to kookify them.
Exactly. It's pre-produced, slickly produced with actors. Disinformation designed, and it's a softball pitch to the people who knock it down. And but what they're trying to do too is cover up this here. I'm looking at a white paper at the National Library of Medicine. You're gonna have to bear with me. Super paramagnetic nanoparticle delivery of DNA vaccine.
Yes, somebody sent that to me.
Somebody sent that to you. Okay, they use nanoparticles of because you only have 5 grams of iron in your entire body. Okay, and so it'd be impossible for a magnet. You have to have a ferrous metal on the other side of your skin for a magnet to stick to it. Now, either the vaccine would have to be like liquid metal, like Terminator 2, or to have, or else it's impossible. So it's a joke. And yeah, I'm glad somebody sent that to you. They use nanoparticles of magnetized DNA vaccine to shoot DNA directly into your cells. And it's very troubling. But, of course, if you talk about that, you must be with those magnet people. You see what I'm getting at? And
yeah,
so
I see where you're going.
Okay. And I don't want to take up no more of your time because I know a lot's gone so far. So thank you for taking my call.
All right, you've got it, and we're going to go to Kathy in Hot Springs. Kathy, thank you for waiting patiently, and I'm afraid in about a minute I'm going to have to take you through the commercial break, but let's get started. What's on your mind?
Hi, my name is Jackie, Mike. That's okay.
All right, sorry.
I wanted to ask this question. That's all right. Anyway, it's Jackie from Hot Springs.
Okay.
You have a caller from Memphis, Mitchell, and he brings out observations and uncomfortable questions. However, I don't think he's a troll because he's not a repeater of everything else I hear. He brings up good questions like, okay, we have an illegitimate government because our election was stolen from us. So therefore, that means we don't have a process. So we have other options. That's worthy of talking about, not attacking other people, but worthy of conversation. What are our options now? What acquiesce, resist, and resist does not mean violence. You can resist in several ways. Or fleeing the country, well, I don't have a lot of money, so that's not an option either.
Well, if Claire and I weren't so old, we'd be looking at relocating someplace else as well, but nobody will have us. Kathy, I got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Jackie in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and we left off with you saying that there are ways to resist that are not necessarily violent, and I would love it if you would expand on that idea.
Yes, Mike. Well, we can resist by simply not complying with mandates.
Mm-hmm.
We can hold people accountable by we have the internet now. So we can hold people accountable and with the age of exposure, expose the wrongdoings and then have a public court. There's ways to organize things like this. We don't have to be violent. I don't want to be violent.
No, I don't want to be violent either.
But in order to be violent, that means you have to identify the violators. And I'm not violating anybody, but I am, as most of us are being violated by what we call the government.
True.
And I want to know if I'm going to be attacked for my next statement. I am a consumer of your show.
Okay.
I enjoy listening to your show and your callers. However, if I want to hear Layla defend herself, can you add another hour to your show? And if I want to hear
well, Layla has her own show now. So you can...
No, and if I want to listen to Layla, I can listen to her on Sunday nights. But I want to hear what the callers have to say. And Tom in Florida, I agree. We got a huge problem with all these people running over, basically raiding into our country.
Yes.
They're invading us. However, Tom, I don't have the answer to this. Tom, think about it. How do we get the people that are allowing this to happen to stop allowing it to happen? Complaining about it's not going to change it.
No, unfortunately, that's true. I mean, with the elections now being totally bogus, the politicians don't have anything to fear from the voters. And I'm sure they're dancing around Washington, D.C., going, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Well, voting again, that's not an answer because it just got stolen.
Yes.
So what's to say it's not going to get stolen again? So I don't know what the answers are. I just know we can't keep doing what we're doing and expecting different results. Isn't that insanity?
You're true. You make a valid point.
How will we hold these people accountable? Past public courts bring charges against these illegitimate imposters. By definition, they're impersonating people of authority. But we, the people, got to get together. Of course, it's kind of hard to do if they don't allow you to assemble together, right?
True.
So but I don't see having a difference of opinion makes one a troll. It just means maybe there's more discussion we need to be having. And when you have a show that's talking to all these people, these discussions, within limitations, of course, might need to be happening. Thinking of ideas, people thinking, and coming up with more solutions that don't require taking another person's life. So
well, you raise a very, very good point here, and of course, this is a talk radio show, and so we do a lot of talking, but I know a lot of people have reached the point where they think talking really doesn't do any good anymore. And that is obviously an area of concern for anybody who's opposed to violence in the streets. But then we're already there with Antifa and Black Lives Matter and what's going on in Portland. And, we already have violence in the streets of America.
Well, so maybe we should start talking to each other because I think our concerns are all basically the same if we are willing to listen to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Something is not right and we need to do something about it. What it is, I don't know, but maybe we need to start listening to each other. And
well, now that we're taking off those stupid masks and not following social distancing, we can get close enough to each other to say, hey, I think the way this country is being run is terrible.
Right, correct. So we the people, we are the majority. We need to come together and come to what's best in our interest, not the money junkies. Using your term, I love it. Not using them. They're not the rulers of us, and we need to let them know. Stop buying their products. Stop supporting them. That's the best way to get those people, is to stop giving them our money. And by the way, keeping gold or silver, just don't tell people you have it. And make sure you're getting real gold.
I agree.
So when Layla says that, I had a problem with this. My husband was a jeweler.
Yes.
And there is a way to test for it. And I can tell you for a fact, an insurance company will assess your jewelry, and if it's junk jewelry or not worthy, they will not insure it. So, Layla, please get your facts together and listen to what you say, sweetie, because you contradict yourself.
Well, like I said, I went out on Amazon and I found an electronic purity tester for gold for like $100. That anybody who is into collecting gold or a lot of gold jewelry can definitely afford that. Me, the only gold I have is this wedding band.
Well, I used to have some in my teeth. That was back before, I had to go to the dentist, but that was the gold I had. But there's ways of testing, and, where I appreciate people's knowledge base. You don't have to be knowledgeable about everything. Focus on what you're knowledgeable at.
Okay.
So that's directly to Layla. She sounds like she has a lot of knowledge on her subjects. She doesn't have to know everything. It's okay to be wrong or not be, that's to give you an opportunity.
It's okay to say, I don't know. And, I've been forced to say that many times on this program.
Yes, sir. So, just everybody give a chance. And just because we don't agree, we can find common ground. And I think we all can agree that we're not happy with the status quo.
No.
We want it to change. We just haven't figured out how we want to do it yet.
Yes.
But
yes, definitely nonviolent resistance is looking very attractive. And again, I'm I look at the way Gandhi got the British out of India, and it wasn't done entirely without bloodshed, but it could have been a lot worse.
And I'm not saying that's not off the table. In order to defend yourself, you must use force sometimes. However, you can defend yourself with words,
Yes.
with coming together as a large group, and like the people have done, walking into the stores in a large group, paying for the products and walking out, but not complying with the mask and other mandates. That was a form of resistance and saying, I want these products, I'm going to pay for them, but I'm not going to follow these ridiculous orders. Okay? That's a form of resistance, and it's beautiful, right? And nobody got hurt. So there's other ways, and that's pretty much it. Thank you for your time, Mike.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Joe in, let's see, Tennessee. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. Thank you for waiting, and what's on your mind?
You have Marco in Alabama.
Yes, I guess it's Marco in Alabama. Somehow we got out of sync in our little message here. But okay, Marco, what's on your mind?
First and foremost, I want to point everybody's attention to the Health Rangers podcast from May 25th, which was yesterday, part number 3, where he talks about Operation Warp Speed. I mean, a lot of answers to some of these questions that we have, like how do we get rid of, the leftist element, the criminals, the illegal aliens. If you sit here and think about, this podcast from the 15,000-foot perspective, there is some plausible theory in Mike Adams's podcast. So once again, go to naturalnews.com and go into the archive and go into yesterday's situation update, part 3, and listen to that. Especially Mark from North Carolina. Mark from North Carolina, you talk about how you dislike, how Trump pushed Operation Warp Speed and the vaccines and whatnot. You might want to think about this when you listen to the situation update, because he offers a theory that basically that, because NPR quoted that 96% due to the Democrats have either taken one phase of the 2 parts of the vaccine or they plan to take all of it, while 49% due to Republicans, because we are so informed, because we have RBN, because we have InfoWars, because we have Natural News, because we have the multiple alternative right websites. Only half of our population, is going to take the vaccine.
Yes.
And if worse comes to worse, and if the French scientist Montaigne or whatever his name is correct, I mean, the whole thing, that the liberals are trying to throw off with that situation is whether or not he said 2 years or not, ignoring the fact, that he said everybody is going to die. It's going to be a mass extinction event. And conservatively, if nearly every Democrat, is going to take the vaccine, man, they're going to kill each other. They're going to kill themselves off, and it's going to open up, room for the pensions in California, in states, that are normally, going to be sunk, by budget windfalls and things like that, are going to be saved because these people, are going to keel over. I mean, the French person said on French national television that people are going to die from the vaccine, and then let's take that in consideration, and let's listen to the plausible theory of Mike Adams. I mean, I don't want people to die or anything like that, but it's going to show the crimes of the deep state and Fauci and Obama and the neocons and all that stuff. And once the people have had enough, and they've seen enough death, they've seen enough, spikes in prices, for food and gasoline and whatnot, and all of the immigrants, that are coming in here, they will see the crimes, and we'll be in a position where we will be able to band together. Tom in Florida, we do have soldiers on the front line. I am a United States Army vet, and there's no way in hell, that I'm going to sit here and let this country go, we're just sitting here playing our position and waiting for you guys to come together with us. Basically, please, everybody, go to naturalnews.com, go into the archive, and listen to Mike Adams' theory about, everything that has gone on recently with the coronavirus in that part 3 part of his situation. You will come back with a new understanding that quite possibly Trump realizes that you're not going to get rid of that leftist element, by, kumbaya and rah-rah, we're going to vote you out.
Yeah, we know that's not going to work.
What's happening in the New World Order is that this vaccine is an IQ test. Those of us that know are going to survive, and the uninformed are going to die. And it's as simple as that. And other than that, I leave you. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Joe in Nome. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
The anthrax. You mentioned, I guess yesterday or the day before, that Rand Paul got a mysterious envelope, huh?
Yeah, that turned out to be harmless powder.
Well, yeah. However, what I want to point out is, regardless of, back, a couple callers back mentioned Leahy and the anthrax attack, and pointing to Fort Detrick, which, makes a lot of sense, but I'd like to point out that it's not Fort Detrick that manufactures this weaponized anthrax. They might be the ones that deploy it, but the contractor for the Army would be Battelle Memorial.
Okay.
And coincidentally, they do have, my dad was a professor at UW, and I lived up the north end of the Arboretum at one time by the floating bridge. Moved out to Lake City later. But UW had a biolab down in Belltown. You familiar? That's just north of the Pike Place.
Okay.
I don't know if they still do. I think once it was discovered or got around, that they probably moved it. But that undoubtedly was, they were, had monkeys in there, and they were working on vaccines. And I got to think that most likely Battelle had their fingers in that too. At any rate, that's coincidentally they have an installation out in Sequim, which is in the shadow. I think I mentioned that before. In the shadow of Bill Gates's citadel in Mount Olympus, which isn't really well known or talked about, but it's there, and you can't get anywhere near it. The construction people that were working on it apparently were signed non-disclosure agreements or what have you.
Yeah, I would not be surprised.
Yeah. But, it's the kids where how the word gets around,
Yeah.
And you heard of that author Eric Ambler? You ever write spy novels?
No, I'm not familiar with him. Sorry.
Oh, he's a good one. But there's a quote in there by a European NATO commander, and he says in the battle between East and West, all of the secrets, or most of the secrets of the West are well known by the East, and vice versa. Most of the secrets the East holds are well known. It's Donald Rumsfeld's known knowns, unknown unknowns, and blah blah blah. But I got to correct you there. It was 2.3 trillion. You got to keep your decimal points straight there.
There was another trillion that had gone missing before that day too. So.
Well, I was just quoting what he said.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Lee Hamilton at the 9/11 Commission, he tried to refute that figure too. So, but the Jersey girls, were the ones that pressed Bush hard enough to even have a 9/11 Commission.
Okay, well, Joe, I hate to do this to you, but we got to take another commercial break, and I'm sorry to cut you off. And we got callers waiting on the line. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go to Daniel in British Columbia. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Daniel, are you there? Okay, I guess we lost Daniel.
Hello?
Let's go to Daniel. Are you there?
Hello.
Hello. You're on the air.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, great. Yeah, I probably don't have enough time to go into what I really wanted to go into. I guess I'll have to phone another day. Cynthia McKinney actually tweeted one time that she thought one of her first stalkers while she was in Congress was one of those Israeli art students that were caught up in a sting just before 9/11.
Yeah, the Israeli spying.
Yeah. So 60 Minutes had a really good segment with they're talking about transgender people wanting to or regretting their decision.
Yes.
And Leslie Stahl got a lot of heat for even touching the subject.
Oh, it's a big, deep, dark secret of the transgender movement. They don't want to know that it's not really working out for the people who go through the process.
Yeah, and it's no surprise in the past 5 or 6 years, 4,000% rise in children identifying as transgender. And
well, it's being sold to them as a fashion trend, even in the schools.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like you said. It's if you say anything about it, you're chastised, and it's like as young as 8 years old. I mean, and that's horrible.
Yes.
So I just think I don't know. I just think it's horrible that these people aren't allowed to wait until they're at age to realize who they are as a person.
I agree. We should let children be children for as long as possible because, turning into an adult, that's a one-way trip. You don't get to turn around and go back when you see how much it sucks to be a grown-up. Yeah,
that's definitely true. I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and I'm going to keep a close watch on her. I mean, there's stories of, these parents that send their children off to college, and women or a girl comes back with a double mastectomy and a mustache. And as funny as that sounds, I don't know how you'd feel if that happened to you, one of your kids. But I mean, that'd be pretty devastating, especially when they come back and say, "Oh, I've changed my mind. I want to go back now, and I feel suicidal because of it." And that's what the 60 Minutes article was talking about. Yeah. So I'll leave you with that. Yeah, I'll call back maybe tomorrow.
Okay, well, thanks an awful lot here, and we're going to try and squeeze Andrea in Oklahoma into the remainder of the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, a while ago, a couple of years ago, you referred to when we elect individuals to go to Washington and represent us, we the people, and do things for us, we the people. It's like a janitor in a school.
Yes.
We expect that janitor to I hear the music.
Yeah. Well, call in tomorrow because you're making a valid point that we need to return to, about the true relationship between we, the American people, and those we trust with the sovereignty of our nation. All right, stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Let's see. Roger Landry is on today with John, so stay tuned for that. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.